There is nothing left. How do I feed you to... Look! This bowl is completely empty.
I know.
My name is
But
Cynthia, and this is my story. I never imagined that the man I married would become the greatest source of pain in my life. I prayed for a loving husband, a peaceful home, and a father who would cherish our children. Instead, I found myself raising 3 children almost entirely on my own, while living under the same roof as a man who cared only about himself. If you've ever wondered how a selfish husband can destroy his own family without even realizing it, then stay with me until the end, because what happened next changed our lives forever. Please subscribe to my channel and always come back for more interesting African story. At exactly 6 o'clock every morning, before the rooster finished crowing, Alex would quietly leave the bedroom and walk into the kitchen. He wasn't going there to prepare breakfast for his family. He was looking for whatever food Cynthia had managed to cook the previous night. If there was a pot of soup and 4 wraps of iba, meant to feed 5 people throughout the day, Alex would eat 3 portions without a second thought. He would wipe his mouth, rinse his plate, and walk out of the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Minutes later, Cynthia would wake the children for school. Opening the pot, her heart would sink. Only 1 small portion remained. She would stare at it for a few seconds before dividing it among the children. She often left for the market without eating. It happened so often that even the youngest child had started asking, "Mummy, did Daddy eat our food again?" Cynthia would only force a smile and reply, "Eat first, my child." She never wanted her children to grow up hating their father. Alex either never noticed or simply didn't care. Whenever Cynthia reminded him that the children also needed to eat, his voice immediately became louder than everyone else's. "So I'm now the wicked man because I ate food in my own house? You women complain too much. I work harder than everybody here." Before long, Cynthia would find herself apologizing, even though she had done nothing wrong. Alex had mastered the habit of making her feel guilty for problems he created. If the school fees were overdue, he blamed Cynthia. If there was no food, he blamed Cynthia. If the children needed clothes, he blamed Cynthia. Meanwhile, he rarely brought money home. Sometimes 2 whole weeks would pass before he dropped a small amount of cash on the table and said, "Manage it." The money could barely feed the family for 3 days. After that, he expected Cynthia to figure everything out. She refused to watch her children suffer, so she worked harder. Every market day she carried vegetables, tomatoes, pepper, gari, and palm oil to sell. During planting season, she joined other women on farms. During harvest, she bought cassava to process and resell. She left home before sunrise and returned after sunset. Her body grew tired, but she kept going because her children depended on her. Whenever Alex realized Cynthia had made some profit, something strange happened. His harsh attitude disappeared overnight. He suddenly became cheerful. He called her, "my dear." He laughed with the children. He even offered to fetch water. The villagers admired him, believing he had become a caring husband. Cynthia knew the truth. His kindness only lasted as long as her money lasted. Soon he would begin asking, "How much did you make today?" "Business is moving well. You should support your husband." Little by little he collected money from her, until her savings disappeared. The moment the money finished, the smiling husband vanished. The insults returned. The shouting returned. The cold silence returned. The children eventually noticed the pattern. Whenever their mother had money, their father acted like the perfect husband. Whenever she had nothing, he became impossible to live with. Their eldest son, Chinedu, was only 10 years old, but he had already started asking himself why his father never cared whether his own children had eaten before serving himself. One Saturday afternoon, Cynthia returned from the market exhausted after standing under the hot sun for hours. She had managed to make enough profit to buy rice, beans, fish, and exercise books for the children. She entered the house with a thankful heart. Alex was sitting outside chatting with friends as if he had no responsibilities. The moment he saw the nylon bags, his face brightened. "Ah, Cynthia, welcome, my hard-working wife." Cynthia looked at him without saying a word. She had heard those sweet words too many times before. She cooked dinner and served the children first. While they were eating happily, Alex walked into the kitchen, opened the pot, and quietly added another large portion to his plate after everyone had already been served. By the time Cynthia entered the kitchen to dish her own food, there was almost nothing left. She sighed deeply. That night she drank water and slept hungry. The following morning she became dizzy while arranging tomatoes in the market. Another trader quickly brought her a chair. "Cynthia, are you all right?" Cynthia smiled weakly. "I'm fine." Deep inside, she knew she wasn't fine. She had become used to sacrificing everything for her children. Weeks passed and Alex became even more selfish. Sometimes he returned from work with snacks hidden inside his bag. Instead of sharing them with the children, he locked himself inside the bedroom and ate alone. One evening, the youngest child saw biscuit crumbs on his father's shirt and innocently asked, "Daddy, did you buy biscuit?" Alex replied, "Mind your business." The little boy quietly walked away, with tears filling his eyes. Cynthia watched everything from the doorway. Her heart broke, but she remained silent because every attempt to correct Alex always ended in shouting. One afternoon, their daughter came home from school crying because she had been sent home over unpaid fees. Cynthia begged the headmistress for one more week while trying to gather money from her small business. That same evening, Alex arrived carrying a brand new pair of expensive shoes. Cynthia stared at the shoes before asking softly, "You bought this today?" Alex proudly nodded. "A man must look good." Cynthia looked at him in disbelief. "Your daughter was sent home today because of school fees." Alex shrugged. "That's your problem. You know how to handle these things." Those words pierced Cynthia's heart. She turned away before he could see the tears forming in her eyes. The following month, she secretly started saving little amounts from every market sale. She prayed that one day she would have enough money to rent a small shop where she could expand her business. She told nobody, not even her closest friend. Unfortunately, Alex somehow discovered her savings. That evening, he suddenly became the caring husband again. He offered to wash plates. He bought bread on his way home. He even apologized for shouting the previous week. Cynthia became suspicious because she knew this version of Alex never lasted. 3 days later, he finally revealed his real intention. "My dear, I need some money. My friend has introduced me to a business opportunity." Cynthia calmly replied, "I don't have any money to spare." Alex frowned. "Don't lie to me. I know you've been saving." Cynthia remained quiet. Alex's voice grew louder. "I'm your husband. Why are you hiding money from me?" Cynthia looked directly into his eyes for the first time in a long while. "Because every time I save for this family, you collect everything and leave us with nothing." Alex immediately became furious. He accused her of disrespecting him. He shouted until neighbors gathered outside the compound. As usual, Cynthia kept quiet. She had learned that silence ended arguments faster than explanations. That night, Alex refused to speak to her. For almost 1 week, he ignored her completely. He refused to greet the children. He refused to ask about their welfare. He only spoke whenever he wanted food. One evening, Cynthia finally reached her breaking point. After putting the children to bed, she sat across from Alex and spoke calmly. "I have endured this marriage for many years because I wanted our children to grow up with both parents. I have covered your responsibilities. I have protected your image. I have defended you before your family. I have defended you before my own family. But I cannot continue like this forever." Alex folded his arms. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Cynthia took a deep breath. "If you refuse to change, I will leave this marriage with my children. I cannot continue raising 4 people when only 3 of them are actually children." Alex burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that tears formed in his eyes. Leave? Go where? You think anybody is waiting for you? You will come back before 1 month. Cynthia quietly stood up and walked into the bedroom without saying another word. For the first time in many years, she stopped begging him to understand. She stopped trying to convince him. She simply became emotionally tired. Alex mistook her silence for weakness. He believed she was making empty threats. Unknown to him, Cynthia had already reached the point where fear no longer controlled her. She had started making plans that would change all of their lives forever. Before Cynthia made the decision to leave, she became quieter than usual. She no longer argued whenever Alex shouted. She no longer explained herself whenever he accused her of things she never did. She simply focused on her children. Alex mistook her silence for fear. He believed she had finally accepted that there was nowhere else to go. Unknown to him, Cynthia had already made up her mind. Every market day, she secretly set aside a small amount of money. Sometimes it was just enough to buy a loaf of bread. Other times it was slightly more. She hid the money where Alex would never think of looking. She knew that if he found it, he would either demand it or invent another excuse to collect it from her. Months passed, and little by little, her savings began to grow. She also spoke quietly with her elder sister Ngozi, who had been living in Lagos for several years. Ngozi had watched her younger sister suffer for too long. Every time they spoke on the phone, Cynthia tried to pretend everything was fine, but an elder sister always knows. One evening, Ngozi said gently, "Cynthia, enough is enough. Bring the children and come to Lagos. You can stay with me until you find your feet." Cynthia remained silent for several seconds before tears rolled down her cheeks. Those were not tears of sadness, they were tears of relief. For the first time in many years, someone had offered her a way out. The sisters carefully planned everything without Alex knowing. Cynthia continued behaving as if nothing had changed. She still cooked, she still went to the market, she still took care of the children. Alex noticed that she had stopped begging him for money and strangely assumed she had finally learned to manage herself. He never bothered to ask how she was surviving. One afternoon, Alex announced that he would be traveling to a neighboring village for 3 days to help with a construction job. Cynthia simply nodded. The moment he left, she moved quickly. She packed only their clothes, school books, important documents, and a few cooking utensils. She did not carry anything that would slow them down. Early the following morning, before sunrise, Ngozi arrived with a hired vehicle. The children quietly entered the vehicle, believing they were going on a long visit. Cynthia locked the house, placed the key with the elderly woman living next door, and asked her to hand it to Alex whenever he returned. She looked at the house one last time, whispered a short prayer, and climbed into the vehicle. As they drove away from the village, Cynthia did not look back again. Several hours later, they arrived in Lagos. The noise, traffic, and endless movement were completely different from village life. But Cynthia felt something she had not experienced in years: peace. For 2 weeks, she stayed with Mozi while searching for a place she could afford. Eventually, she rented a modest one-bedroom apartment in a busy neighborhood. The sitting room also served as the children's sleeping area. The kitchen was very small, and the bathroom was outside the main building, shared with other tenants. It was far from luxurious, but every corner of that little apartment was filled with peace instead of fear. Nobody shouted during meals. Nobody rushed into the kitchen to finish all the food before everyone woke up. Every evening, Cynthia served the children first, then served herself, and they all ate together while laughing over stories from school. The children gradually became happier. Their teachers noticed that they were paying more attention in class. Their smiles slowly returned. Meanwhile, back in the village, Alex returned home, expecting to find dinner waiting for him. Instead, he found an empty house. At first, he assumed Cynthia had gone to the market. As evening approached and nobody returned, he became restless. The elderly neighbor handed him the house key and quietly said, "Your wife and the children have left." Alex laughed. "She'll be back tomorrow." Tomorrow came, then another day, then another week. Nobody returned. He finally called Cynthia. She answered calmly, "Hello." Alex shouted, "Where are you?" Cynthia replied softly, "The children and I are safe. Come back home immediately." "No." Alex was shocked by how calm she sounded. "What do you mean, no?" Cynthia answered, "I have spent years asking you to become a husband and a father. You refused. I begged you to think about your children. You refused. I warned you that I would leave if nothing changed. You laughed at me. I have kept my promise." Alex immediately changed his tone. "People will laugh at me." Cynthia replied, "You were never worried about what people would say when your children went hungry." He begged her to return. She refused. He promised to change. She quietly answered, "You have made that promise too many times without keeping it." The call ended. Months passed. Alex traveled to Lagos, hoping to convince her in person. After searching for days, he finally found the apartment through a distant relative. Cynthia opened the door but refused to invite him inside. The children stood behind her quietly. Alex looked around and realized that although the apartment was small, it was filled with warmth. He could hear laughter instead of arguments. He could see healthy children instead of frightened faces. "Please come back," he pleaded. Cynthia shook her head. "No, Alex, we are finally living in peace. I will not return to the life I escaped, and I will not allow you to move in with us unless you truly become a different man. Words are no longer enough." Alex became angry again. "So you've become proud because you're in Lagos?" Cynthia smiled sadly. "No, I have simply learned that peace is worth protecting." She gently closed the door. Alex stood outside for several minutes before walking away. Back in the village, people encouraged him to remarry. He believed finding another woman would be easy. The first woman he became close to noticed that he expected her to pay for almost everything. She quietly ended the relationship. The second woman discovered how selfish he was after he visited her and finished almost all the food she had prepared, without asking whether anyone else had eaten. She immediately lost interest. Another woman noticed that he blamed everyone else for every problem in his life. According to Alex, his wife was the problem, his children were the problem, his neighbors were the problem, and even his employers were the problem. She asked him one simple question: "Has it ever occurred to you that maybe you are the problem?" Alex became offended and walked away. News spread around nearby communities. Women began avoiding him because they had heard how he treated his family. Years passed, and Alex remained alone. Not because there were no women around him, but because his behavior pushed every good person away. The saddest part was that even after losing his wife, his children, and every opportunity to build another family, he still refused to look inward. He continued insisting that everyone else had failed him. He grew older, lonelier, and more bitter, never realizing that the greatest prison he lived in was the one created by his own character. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Cynthia continued rebuilding her life one day at a time. Her small business expanded, her children excelled in school, and although life was not always easy, every night they went to bed knowing they were safe, loved, and finally free.